Simon Mason. What did I do? I tried to stop little white thing going in big netty thing for quite a long time by playing in goal for England, Great Britain for about 13 years. Now I am the owner and MD of Mercian Sports. First memories on a hockey pitch were genuinely being the worst right winger you can imagine. I changed schools when I was 11 and went to school where the headmaster was the England under-16 manager. He encouraged me to play hockey because that's what he did, extracurricular, in a sports hall after school. We didn't have a pitch, we just had a sports hall, so everything was done indoors. And yeah, I played out on field for a year. Then he claimed it was an inspired coaching decision to go put me in goal. I claim he said, you were awful at right wing, right midfield, right half and right back. You should give goalie a go or give up. So I gave goalie a go and 10 months later played for England under-16s in goal. That was the beginning. I played football when I was young, so I guess from cubs, so whatever that used to be, kind of probably 8 years old or so, through to about 11. And then I've always enjoyed playing any sport that I was given an opportunity to play, but hockey became an all-consuming thing pretty quickly. And I dabbled with a bit of football, a bit of rugby, and I wasn't built for rugby at that point. I was 6'2" and about 3 inches wide, so you get snapped if you play rugby. But I've always enjoyed anything, any sort of sport you can, any sort of competitive environment. Anything I lose at. So lots of them. So yeah. Anything that, I mean, if you classify it as a pastime, I'd probably struggle with it as a sport. So I'm not a big fan of a snooker or darts in a pub with a pint. I'm okay with that, that's all right. But again, it's more of a pastime. Or anything that requires any sort of artistic coordination like dancing. It's not my thing. Yeah, rhythmic gymnastics with a ribbon, throwing some balls and catching them up in the air, that kind of thing. Yeah, no, we're not good at that. The honest response is I don't recall having any specific ones at all. I mean, some people talk about that they watched the gold medal game in 1988 as a hockey epiphany and that was what they wanted to do. I watched it, I sat, and I can vividly remember the game. Did that put me into a mindset to go, this is what I must do? No, I had a fabulous family environment. Unfortunately, my father passed away when I was 15 and that kind of led to a single parent thing, but my mum was incredibly supportive with the hockey. But I can't, if there was a real childhood dream, the one thing was, I always said I wanted a sports car. I had pictures of cars all over my bedroom, Lamborghinis and Ferraris of the time, and always said, I will have one, and that is still the goal, albeit now it probably has to be electric, not V12, but still the same thing. You show me a picture, if you go to my office back in Woking, there is still little toy cars and little pictures on the wall of cars that you could dream about owning and aspiring to. Now I drive a Volkswagen Transporter van with 175,000 miles on the clock and kicking out diesel fumes. But apart from that, it's the same kind of thing. Oh, good food and good wine, 100%. I joke that trying to get in the gym as much as I possibly can, 3 or 4 times a week, trying to play hockey at weekend, the single sole reason for doing that is so that I can enjoy a good steak and a red wine. That, without a shadow of a doubt, that is the pleasure. Yeah, so the guilty pleasure, steak and red wine. And favourite country to have that, we might come back to it later on, but that in South Africa, which is my kind of favourite place to have that kind of food. Or Argentina, I've been lucky enough to go to both, and good steak and a Malbec is pretty hard to beat. Lack of effort. So I've got no problem with winning or losing as long as people give it their best. If you commit to doing something, then do it. Do it to the best of your ability. In my mind, there's no point leaving something out there for next time, or because there might not be a next time. So it's not about capability, it's not about competence, it's just simply about if you do your best. Be the best you can be on any given day, do the best you can do, and that's great. Anything other than that, we all have down days, but it's consistency of effort probably. So pet hate is inconsistency of effort. Yeah, and having been lucky enough to do 3, I have vividly different memories of all 3. And I think it'd be interesting if somebody did an academic study about success at different Olympic Games, because I genuinely think I was better in the latter, second and third, than I was in the first. The first, I can tell you everything about what happened socially, what happened in the village itself. Couldn't tell you what I can tell you one result, but the rest I can't tell you. The other ones I can then vividly start to remember the hockey. So I think you change the dimension of why you're there. It is the magic kingdom of sport. It is just unfeasible. You can't explain it really. You get locked in this bubble with 10,000 of the world's greatest athletes, and to begin with, you're all on the level playing field. Then people start to win medals, and there becomes a very special club, and that's what every Olympian aspires to. And I never got to that point. It's a disappointment, but at that point we just simply weren't good enough. The one a vivid memory is the opening ceremony in Sydney, and for me, teamwork is a lot about camaraderie and friendship. And I can remember walking into the stadium in Sydney, which was 110,000 people, and they hold you in a holding stadium, and then you walk down and underneath and then up, and you fronted for that one. You entered high and you came down over the stadium rather than entering low. And I stood at the top next to John Wyatt, who's now the Director of Sport at the FIH. He's my best hockey mate in the entire world. And we stood there having crested over the top. And even now I can make the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. And you crested over the top, and it genuinely looked like 110,000 people were just looking at you. They weren't, they were looking at the vista and everything. But at that moment you went, this was worth the effort. And it was. And it is my abiding moment of walking into that stadium and seeing everything that was laid out in front of you and going, this is a real opportunity. And that was then only flipped a little bit in terms of the impact when, having stopped playing, I was then involved with 2012 as I was on the athlete committee for just under 6 years. And having been through the entire process, you were then invited to be part of the Olympic Games for that period of time. You had a pass that got you into anything. And about 2 weeks before the Games, the phone rang, and somebody on the other end of the phone, I can't remember who it was, said, would you like to be part of a medal ceremony? And my response down the phone was, are you joking? I tried for 12 years to be part of a medal ceremony. It didn't work then. What are you offering? And genuinely, that was my response, because I had no idea it was coming. And what it was an invitation. Everybody who was on a committee was invited to be part of a medal ceremony. But you don't know what until they ring you at 48 hours notice. And they rang, and it was to be in the stadium on Super Saturday. And I walked out, and I would like to say I presented Hannah Cockcroft, the 200-metre wheelchair medal winner, with her gold medal. I didn't. I was the biggest, ugliest flower girl that you've ever seen, as a very important Japanese gentleman on the IOC board actually presented her with a medal. But I then stood next to Hannah Cockcroft when the flags went up and 80,000 people sang the national anthem in the stadium on Super Saturday when she got a gold medal. And I can therefore only imagine what it's like to be the athlete receiving it, but to get that close to it and be part of that emotional moment was pretty special. So those are probably my two abiding memories of Olympic Games. You could have been handing it out to a Ukrainian pole vaulter, but it was on Super Saturday, on the Saturday night, which just genuinely amazing, absolutely incredible. Oh, and it was mad, and I stood there doing everything I could to not cry, because that was it. I was like, don't cry, do not cry. And literally everything's welling up, and you go, yeah. At very base level, I don't think what is needed has changed, because what is needed is an insane level of dedication and commitment and sacrifice and desire and drive to be the best you can possibly be. That's at the base level. If you want to play and represent your country, you have to be prepared to go one step further than anybody else. Ignoring talent. Talent is something that, essentially, I believe talent is something you have. You can then nature and nurture to make it better, but let's make the assumption that if somebody has the talent, it's then that desire to do one more thing, one more rep, one more effort, and to then accept. And I think it's quite hard now, I'll use the phrase in this day and age, I think people's desire or ability to take on negative comment is being compromised by the world must be nice and fluffy and we can't criticise anybody. And I would sit here now and say that I spent 12 years with somebody telling me every day what I needed to do to be better. But that was never a personal, you, Simon Mason, are not good enough. You are good, you just need to be better. They're not trying to beat you down, they're trying to make you better. Whereas now I think it has to be dressed up in such a way that, oh, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. And I think that makes the environment different. I'm not saying it's better or worse. I'm just saying that I liked and appreciated the constant support and desire to achieve a goal, and therefore I think so you have to have the talent, you then have to have that desire and ability to go one step beyond anybody else, and then the ability to take on what could be perceived to be negative comment with that defined common purpose as the end result, and that's where you're trying to get to. So as long as you can put all of that together, I think the needs of international sport are very similar. It is now far more professional. There is so much that surrounds international athletes, A, from a support perspective, but B, from a distraction perspective, the media, the digital environment, all of those things that means they have to be so careful. I'm pretty certain that if there was social media and Facebook back in 94, 95, 96, there'd be a lot of athletes who probably weren't playing anymore. No.
Neither.
No, afraid I can't remember either of those. So no is the answer to your question. Why? If I follow it up with my own question to myself, I can remember my first cap. So I can remember playing for Great Britain outdoors. It was a Champions Trophy out in Pakistan, and we played against Spain in the very first game, which was amazing. You're in a stadium with tens of thousands of people, in a country where hockey was their absolute culture. It kind of is struggling a little bit at the moment now, but we're talking what 30 years on. But that was pretty special. Prior to that, European Indoor Cup. I was there. I benched for a guy called David Lucas, who, interestingly, my best two medals ever as an international athlete were sitting on the bench to him while he sat on the bench for me for the best part of about 10 years. But the two medals I have, so Commonwealth Games bronze and an Indoor European silver, were both sitting on the bench to him. He was a talented, very, very talented guy. Was also the guy who wrote the bid document as to whether we even hosted the London Olympics, was the first employee of the bidding company, and then the first employee of LOCOG itself as the goalkeeper that I played for 10 years with. Amazing man, amazing man. So intelligent, with fantastic ability to intellectually and then sporting wise to combine it. Brilliant guy. So I can remember like being with him, doing various things and being part of a team. Can't remember anthems. Regrets in life and regrets in hockey. Wow. I'll go regrets in hockey first. Looking back on it, I don't think I ever performed at Olympic level as well as I did at other tournaments. I look back at that and I think, I alluded to it earlier on with distractions from Olympic Games. I think I allowed, not consciously, but I wasn't disciplined enough to not allow the distractions to impact on performance. If I look at when I played well and how I played well, it wasn't ever at an Olympic Games. I mean, I was credited with being one of the best goalkeepers in the world for a long period of time, and yet that never came from Olympics. It was always from Worlds and Europeans and club competitions. So that's probably, looking back now, my regret. And you can argue that if you go as a first-time Olympian, well, how do you know? The answer is you don't. So I think it's kind of a little bit unlucky, but it is what it is. So that's, from that perspective, that's probably my biggest hockey regret. I don't know, from a life perspective, I would genuinely struggle to put my finger on anything meaningful. I try to make it personally. I try to go through life and work hard and commit to the projects I commit to and not upset too many people and genuinely be a reasonable human being. At times I will have undoubtedly failed in that, as we all do. But if when you get to that point when we all leave this earth, then that's very philosophical, then I'd like to think that there'd be some sort of a do in a party where people turn up and go, most of the time he was an all right bloke. And if you achieve that, I think you've kind of achieved what you set out to do. And business-wise, if that turns into either a silent electric car or a V12, then I've ticked a little personal box. But at the other end, Mercian's 50 years old next year, and we've employed staff across the industry for 50 years. I've owned it in full since 2016 and in part since 2008, and we've got some staff who've been with us all that time, and therefore we've built a business with a team of people who I think genuinely enjoy coming to work a majority of the time, And they would go home and say, yeah, it's a nice place to be, and we've got a good group of people, and everybody, if they can go to the pub on a Friday night and get on and have a beer and generally be okay with each other, I think we've created a team that has value. So yeah, I think simple as that. Hockey one is relatively easy, because the hockey one I always attribute to, there's 4 Johns who've been through my hockey career who have made a significant difference. First of all, you had John Law, who was the headmaster of the school I moved to, and he put me in goal, and because of him I was the goalkeeper that I was. Without him going goal, and he bought me my first set of pads, he organised my first set of sponsorship, and therefore was a driving force in me being anything in hockey at all. Second one, when I got into the senior squad, was John Hurst, who anybody in hockey knows who John Hurst is. I mean, he is one of the goalkeeping gurus, has had a hand in British goalkeeping since he was a British goalkeeper back in the 70s and 80s. An incredibly talented goalkeeper in his own right, became a goalkeeper coach and has coached, I have no idea, 20, 30, 40 different international goalkeepers, all the way through to the icon that is Maddie Hinch and who she is, and he had a hand in her and that gold medal performance back in Rio, and therefore probably over the years I think John would have had a hand in more international goalkeepers than any other goalkeeper coach on the planet. Third one was John Kopp, who was at Reading Hockey Club when I joined and was part of this vision that ended in us winning the European Cup with Reading in 2003, and he had a vision to create a team that in that time could compete with Europe's best. And it was a long plan, and it was reliant on a belief and a vision around a club that took a long time to develop, but it did so. He went to, I think, 2 Olympic Games in a couple of different roles, and was unlucky not to be kind of credited with more success from an international perspective. And finally, the fourth John was the one I alluded to earlier on, which is John Wyatt. If you're going to go through a career, you need a wingman. You need somebody that is with you kind of every step of the way, and he was. And he got me to Reading. It was a conversation with him that said, do you want to come and be part of something special? And him and I then shared 8, 9 years at Reading, and did win every single trophy that you could win in Europe, which was pretty cool. And there's moments that stick in your mind, but we won the European Cup because of a moment of bravery from him, where, if we have time to tell a story, so we played against Polo Club in the final of the European Cup of 2003. 5 minutes in, penalty corner flicker from them, has flicked the ball, it's hit John in the shoulder, gone in the roof of the net for 1-0. We've then gone backwards and forwards for the entire game. We then equalised with 4 minutes to go. Richard Mantell, the great Richard Mantell, with a sliding pass, looking over there and passing over there. And Ken Robinson, New Zealand centre forward, with his final touch in club hockey, tipped it in at the far post for 1-1. And then with 2 minutes to go, Polo Club got a corner. Polo Club got a penalty corner, and normally I was trying to play around to the striker and get in his face, and the striker would not look at me. He just eyeballed John Wyatt, and the corner came out and was stopped, and he flicked it straight at John Wyatt's face. And John took one step inside it and hit it for 4 over the sideline. He just went, job done. And then literally, and then we went on strokes. It was old days, and it went to penalty strokes, and we went on penalty strokes, but just moments of sheer brilliance. And so John was a wingman and a defining factor in the success of that team. So yeah, those 4 Johns. If that was what the whole question was, then that was the people that defined my hockey career. Dog. Indian. Coffee. Ski. Sebco. Winning the European Cup in 2003. No. No. That last series I watched. Taskmaster. Not succeeding. Sunrise. 8. Don't fear failure. Stop Little White Thing going a big netty thing. I joke, that is something I repeat on many occasions to lots of goalkeepers. I genuinely couldn't remember. I can't think of anything that I have said that is punchy and has meaning, but I would always try and encourage people to believe in themselves and to just simply find what they're good at and play to their strengths. Oh, it is a very apt question, but given that my usual question on that is if you won the Euro Millions, what cars would you buy? There's so many different answers, and it depends whether it's a sunny day or a cloudy day, but what type of car would I be? I'm going to go with an Audi RS6 Avant. Bit of a workhorse. Get stuff done. If you need to, you can accelerate it, put your foot down, and it'll pull away from other people, but through sheer hard work rather than being fancy and flashy. Let's think about this. What makes you genuinely happy?
And that's Simon Mason. He's a rat.
Bosh.